The eagle has landed, and it is time for another episode of A Little Off the Top with your host,
Hannah.
And Noah. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. A little late, just a little bit.
We just took a break.
Yeah, I just took a break. Turns out I'm 100% in need of a break.
It was a very busy week for both of us.
Yeah, and last week was too. We decided to take a little break and give people a little more time to check out our podcast-a-thon episode with Molly. That was a very informative, very good interview. If you haven't listened to that one yet, go back, check it out. It's worth it. It's a lot of great information, and it supports and gets eyes and ears on a great nonprofit.
Yeah.
So, we're back, though. We are back, and we are here, and it is time for episode number 49.
Wow, we're almost to 50.
Which means our next episode will be our 50th episode. Did you know that most podcasts don't make it past 5 episodes?
Really?
And we are going to have 10 times that.
Look at us, shooting for the stars.
Now, we may stop after that. This could all go away after that. We'll see how episode 50 goes. You know, it's hard because I have fun doing this, but some weeks it's just like, man, it's hard to get into the mode. It's hard to get a place in the schedule where you're like, after both of us have worked all day and stuff, to be like, all right, let's sit down behind microphones and talk instead of relax, you know. But I enjoy doing it. I really do. And I think you do too. I
do. I have a lot of fun with it.
And I know the people who consistently listen to us have fun with it too. I wish we could just get some more ears on this. And it's hard because
there's so many. It's such a saturated
it
field.
It is. It really is. And if you don't have, marketing and, all that good stuff, it's hard to take from the ground up and build something. Taking a sip of my sparkling water here. Anyway, how you doing? How's it going?
I'm good. I am glad to be off work.
Yeah.
I picked up another night of call for somebody who I guess didn't check the schedule and was unaware of the fact that they were on call. Mm-hmm. And so last night, even though I didn't get called I got called in at 10:15. And it just took me forever to go back to sleep. That's the thing about call, is getting called in once I'm in the bed.
Yeah.
When I get back home, it's like an hour and a half before I can go back to sleep.
Well, and you had barely been called all day, and then all of a sudden we're going to sleep and your phone rings.
Yeah.
I can always tell it whenever like it's coming, because you'll have your white noise playing from your phone, and then all of a sudden it drops.
The volume
out.
just drops.
And there's like 1 second of silence, and then your ringtone starts, and I'm like, ugh.
I know. I know. As soon as the volume drops, I get anxiety.
Yeah. Yep. And you never know which ringtone it's going to be, but you assume here it comes.
Yeah. Well,
here it comes.
But when I'm on call, I have it on, mark it to where that's the only one that comes through. Yeah. But yeah, so
we've had some movie outings since our last conversation. Yawn right into the microphone.
I know.
Cough right into the microphone. Yeah, well,
I didn't cough into the microphone. I coughed away from it.
Oh, okay. Sure.
It was the Jason Statham movie.
Yeah, A Working Man.
A Working Man.
Which is based off of a 12-book series of the character Levon Cole. And I talked about this with the brothers from Down Under earlier today and said, I said, they were like talking about what are some other ways to bring this character back? Like he immediately starts to take down HR because there's somebody corrupt in HR or something. And then they were talking about that on the way home last night. They watched it last night. We watched it the night before or the day before. But then they realized that it was part of a 12-book series. And I said, yeah. I was like, we may see more of this character, and then eventually it'll just get wove into the Fast and the Furious franchise, and he'll just play both characters.
Both. What was it? Was he Shaw or Hobbs?
I think he's Hobbs.
Yeah.
And so he's like Hobbs and then also Levon Cole.
And they hate each other.
Yeah, somehow they hate each other and they like argue with each other. And Nick actually said, let me pull up the text here real quick. He said something about that whenever I made that point. He said, oh yeah, a heated argument between two Jason Stathams is something I need to see. It would never end, just back and forth, putting each other in arm locks and grunting almost the same sentence over and over again. And I said, that would be incredible.
Yes, it would.
Also, he asked me, and people don't know about this joke, but Ryan had asked me the question that what would be the pivotal scene if I was starring in a sports movie? Mm-hmm. And I went through this whole thing, and Nick said, would I be willing to sign away my life's rights and have Jason Statham play me in quote unquote Cross the Line, which is the movie title? And I said, he said he'll be a student athlete and the only change will be a bad wig. And I said, better yet, I play myself and he plays the coach, still with a bad wig or at least a mustache. And Nick goes, oh, that works well.
Yeah, where he just gets to scream at you.
Yeah.
At least once.
Yeah, he's just like, you got to cross the line. You got to cross the line. Do the job and cross the line.
You know, the thing about Jason is that all of his movies that I've seen are ridiculous. They're over the top.
Yeah.
But I will go back over and over and over again because his action films are satisfying.
Yes.
I don't have to put a whole lot of thought into them. I go in, I enjoy the action, I enjoy the crazy explosions, and then we're done.
You're consistently going to get like a 4 to 6 out of 10 of quality in a Jason Statham film. Mm-hmm. But they are so much fun, and there's almost I told you this after the movie, there's almost an endearing quality to them. He plays the reluctant hero who in most cases is retired, and but in this one, he was a working man. Mm-hmm. Actually, in fact, it was said, you're not a cop, you're a working man in the film. And I think my exact review to our group of friends was somebody asked how it was, and I said, let me find it. I said, Working Man was the typical campiness yet almost endearing quality of a Statham flick. Some good action, some terrible acting, a good time. And that is what it is. You know what you're coming for, and it does not take itself too seriously. Yep. It knows it is a cheesy action film, and it just goes with that. Yeah. And I enjoy that.
Yeah, me too.
It's a good time. It doesn't... That is the problem with Fast and the Furious. If Fast and the Furious knew that it was a terrible film and posed itself as, yes, I know this is terrible, and that is the point of it, I would have a better time. But for some reason, Vin Diesel,
way too seriously.
Vin Diesel takes himself way too seriously, especially as that character Dom, Dominic Toretto family. Anyway, like it just comes off as so like higher than it really is, and it's just bad.
But if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the amazing quote.
Family. Oh, you made one mistake. You didn't take my car. Yeah, it's terrible. It's horrible. Also, Nick and Ryan said that that there should be another movie where Statham plays a high school counselor.
Yes.
And I said,
that would be so much fun.
That'd be incredible. A counselor who's like former military, that would be so good. I would watch that 10 times out of 10.
It was funny how busy the movie theater was. We have been there so many times, and not always during the week. We've been there on the weekend before too. That was the movie that we have had the most people in the theater with us. And to that I say, people. But there was some around our age. Yeah. And to that I say, heck yeah, Nebraska.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what are you reading right now? This is something I want to kind of get incorporated, and we both trying to read more, and so I want to talk about a little bit. What are we reading right now? What are you reading right now, Hannah?
My brain just went
Riley Sager, blank. Middle of the Night.
Middle of the Night, that's right.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, sorry. I've been on that Facebook group. It's a book club
Yeah,
group,
yeah.
and I've read so many titles today with like people, saying, "Oh, I really like this one," and giving their feedback on stuff, that as soon as you asked me that, my brain went, ugh.
What am I reading?
There is no book titles. But it is, I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's kind of a take on a murder mystery,
Mm-hmm.
and also maybe a little bit of a ghost story.
Oh.
But yeah, it's really good. I have no idea where the author is going with this.
See, I got you this one, and I got it because somebody that I knew posted it on their story on Facebook, and I was like, well, I know Hannah's read stuff from that author before, and I knew she liked it, and I also trust the opinion of this person because they read a million books. So I'm like, if they read a lot of books, they gotta at least know kind of.
They gotta be a little picky about it,
right? And they read a lot of the books in the same realm of what you read. So I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll just get it. I asked them what they thought, and they said they just started it, and then later on they messaged me and was like, oh man. By the end, I was like, whoa. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. So I'm glad, because I was like, well, I already got it. So I'm glad you gave that review.
Yeah.
You hadn't started it by then yet. But
I don't even have any kind of like thought of anything. Like literally,
which is not typical for
completely
you.
In the dark. No, usually within the first quarter of a book, I'm like, pretty sure this is what this is going to happen or whatever.
I am currently reading a book that's it's a true story called The Cross and the Switchblade. It's about David Wilkerson, who was a pastor in rural Pennsylvania, who just took God's leading. One night he looked at a article in Times Magazine, and it was covering these boys who were part of a gang who murdered this young man, and they were on trial, and he felt a leading from God to go to New York City to minister to these boys, and he didn't know how, and so he did it. And his first thing to happen was very public embarrassment. But that led to some very open doors for him that would have never happened. And I'm just getting started, but already the things in the story are incredible. It's a incredible story. I heard it mentioned in a sermon when we were in New York, and you said that's a really good book because you had read it in school, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got it, and it's been on my list for a while of getting through books, and this is the one I'm currently on. And then I'm also reading a daily devotional called "In the Lord I Take Refuge," which is written by Ray Ortland. He writes the devotional part of it. He also wrote the book Gentle and Lowly, and he just came out with a book, and I don't remember what the title was. But anyway, it's just every day you read a psalm, and then there's a devotion with that direct psalm, and you read through the psalms in 150 days. It's going to take me longer because I've not read every single day, but I'm trying to be more intentional about that. So anyway, yeah, I don't have a bumper for that, but that's what we're reading right now. So why don't we get into the meat of the episode now, since we've rambled for almost 15 minutes.
Let's do it.
All right.
Hello, healthcare, my worst friend. I don't want to talk to you again.
All right, Hannah. You take the lead on this one.
Oh, me. So I am an X-ray tech and a part of several different X-ray tech pages, I guess, on Facebook. And so I had made a post talking about the podcast and asking for techs to share their funny stories.
Which we've done this once before. Mm-hmm.
And so we did not even get through probably 25% of those stories the last time. So we're just going to pick up where we left off. This lady says, I was doing my first TAVR scan, which is a CT scan.
Okay.
And was very flustered. During the injection, I realized there's no contrast. I run out to check the patient, and she looks like she's been through a car wash. with 100 milliliters of Isoview 370 sprayed all over her because I had forgotten to hook her up. When I asked why she didn't say anything, she said, well, you told me to hold very still and not move.
Yikes.
That patient is going to be so sticky.
Yeah.
And literally the only thing that takes that off is like hot water and soap. It's the worst. It's so sticky. And depending on what she ends up washing her clothes with, it may or may not stain it.
Jeez.
I had a patient once that their the tubing that goes from the injectors to the patient's IV, it had come loose, and so while the contrast was injecting, because it injects at such pressure, and the contrast is so thick, it had unscrewed itself, and so it ended up spraying all over the patient's arm.
Ooh.
Which was up by their head because, you bring your arms up over your head. So, it got in her hair. I felt so bad. I felt so bad.
So I found a thing that's like one-line stories. So I'll spatter these in as well. And it says, hours after torturous labor, most women are ready to meet their new little arrival. Not this one. As the baby's head was crowning, my patient loudly shrieked, "Put it back." I'm afraid it's not that easy.
It don't work that way, lady.
Yeah.
I once accidentally told a little girl that her mom was pregnant, so she couldn't come in during her CAT scan. And her mom gasped and said, "We haven't told her yet."
Oh no.
Whoops.
Oh no. This actually goes right with it, so I'll read it. I'm not going to go back and forth every single one, but it said, I had a patient tell me smoking was her method of birth control because she'd heard that infertility was a side effect of smoking.
Oh, my God. I had some teenagers once that I asked if there was any chance she could be pregnant.
In the pool?
Yeah, that they only did the deed in the water because that was how that worked. And I was like, no, you need to get your facts straight.
Yeah, that
ain't it.
That's not how that works. Well, it's also, that goes along with like the I fell on it stories.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yikes.
I was once doing films on a trauma patient in the ER. He was an older man who had long, dirty gray teeth, or long, dirty gray hair, jacked up teeth, smelled, you get the idea. His shirt was removed and he had a homemade prison tattoo on his chest that said, "I eat, insert female genitalia."
Oh, no.
I remember thinking in my head, yeah, but I bet those days are over.
Oh. Yikes. Yeah, probably.
That's, if you ever see somebody with a name tattooed on them, just don't ask. It is not worth it. I had a patient that we took them back up to the room, and the little CNA in there saw a woman's name tattooed on this man's arm, and there was a woman in the room with him, and she said, "Oh, he must love you so much. He's got your name tattooed on your arm." And that woman, stone-faced, looked this little CNA in her eyes and said, "That's not my name." And I just booked it out of that room as fast as I could. It was just like, nope, not involved.
I don't get that. Tattooing a name on your body, like, it's a bad idea.
It is a bad idea.
Because names just in general, but this mint is really throwing me off. It's an icebreaker sparkling. It's pineapple mango seltzer, and they must put the same stuff as Pop Rocks because it like bubbles in your mouth. And I put a mint in thinking, oh, this will be fun. But it's making me like salivate so much from the bubbles.
You're making so many mouth noises right now.
It's throwing me off so much. Anyway, it's just a bad idea. I've been listening to this one podcast a lot recently, and one of the things he said was they were talking about debt. That's what the whole podcast is, and they were talking about this person's debt, and they're like, "What is this charge?" And he's like, "I had to get this tattoo," and it was of a girl that their marriage lasted 1 year. He said they shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. And then he's like, you know what the kicker is? And the host is like, what? He said, she already had the initials of 2 other dudes on her.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, probably don't
That's
put
a red flag, my friend.
don't put her initials on your body if she's already got the initials of 2 other people like that and they're no longer in her life. Yeah, probably not a good idea. No.
She's just collecting them as like
right. Yeah,
she's
just a list
bedpost.
for her. Like I guess I don't know.
That's her little black book.
She uses her own body as her little black book. That's wild. Anyway, sorry to derail things a little bit there. The mint is gone, so
All right.
hopefully not as many mouth noises as the rest of the episode.
I was scanning a middle-aged male once for an abdomen pelvis without, and I said, okay, I'll need your pants down. He lowers them, and I cover him with the sheets, and I start raising the table, and I say, okay, this one's real quick and easy. I'm just going to go in and out. And what she's talking about is like the table in the CT machine is going to go in and out 3 times, and then you're all done.
Oh, no.
He said, that's usually my line when I take my pants off.
Oh.
And I literally could not be professional. And I just died laughing. I said, I must have said this 1 trillion times in my career, and not a single person has once made it into a joke like that. And now I can't say it anymore.
Yikes. Maybe we should put a content warning on this episode that it's a little PG-13 comparatively to our usual PG.
It's because of these dang patients, man.
Is that what it is?
That is.
Healthcare workers aren't the situation.
No, we're not the problem.
I have met many healthcare workers, and there's a common denominator here.
There is.
It's not just the
trauma
patients.
bonding.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this one is it's not just one sentence, but we all gathered around the bed of a patient having a grand mal seizure, watching her arms and legs shaking uncontrollably, except there were whispers that maybe she was faking it. I reached over and gently tugged the pillow out from under her head. She quickly reached out with her hand, grabbed it, tucked it back under her head, and kept seizing. Busted.
Have you seen the video of the little girl who's like faking that she's sleeping?
Oh yeah, just like
in her car
people
seat,
who
and
sleep really
the
hard.
mom's like, you know how we know if she's really, really asleep is if you pick her arm up and it stays in the air, and her arm stays in the air.
Yeah.
And it's like, now do you know how to know if they're really asleep? And that's if the other arm goes up in the air. And here goes that little girl's arm. That's what it makes me think of.
It's so wild, like this whole faking the seizing thing. People fake stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Girls in my high school would do that. They would fake passing out and they would fake seizures because it would get them out of class.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
And then the girl who did actually have a seizure, no one believed her.
Yeah.
There was a girl who actually like passed out and stuff.
Poor
and
thing.
People were like, she's faking it like all the other girls.
Well,
and
I mean, think about all of the old movies where the woman would be like,
and fall. Yeah, for sure.
hand to the forehead.
Yeah, I literally the motion I did when you started talking about it.
We apparently had a high school student recently. Well, by recently, it was shortly before I came in September of last year. And she was I think she was in the pain clinic procedure room. And so it's a lot of like steroid injections. Well, you know, that's pretty long needles.
Yeah, right.
And I guess the site, and it's not a bloody thing, but the site of the big long needle getting pushed down into the spine.
Yeah.
She ended up passing out in the ER. And then they took her to the ER because she hit her head.
Right. Oh no. So, was she in the pain clinic like as a student?
Yeah, just observing.
Well, at least she learned early.
The OR is not for you.
That is not the place you should be. You gotta do some growing if you're going to be there, because me.
It says, oh boy, I have so many. Once I was getting ready to do a CT chest on a middle-aged man. It was a high-resolution chest. So that means they're going to be partly on their back, partly on their stomach. Mm-hmm. It's a bunch of different scans.
Yeah.
Which is not necessary for this, but I was just trying to educate. He had oxygen
okay.
going, so I said I could hook it up to the wall for him. He then told me, it's okay, I don't need it. He then turns the oxygen off, sets it down on the chair, takes out his nasal cannula, and then proceeds to suck the snotty boogers off of his nasal cannula right in front of me. I literally didn't know what to do besides gag.
I just had an actual those were not just noises. That was, I'm sure that was picked up because that was loud. That's
Snot and like
I can't
any
even
kind
hold
of
this thing now.
any kind of mucus.
Yeah.
Like if they're having to like suction out a trach or whatever, I can't. I cannot do that. I couldn't work in respiratory therapy.
You can't even, if I like brush my teeth and then like clear my throat out at the same time when I'm spitting, you leave the bathroom.
Nope.
You're like, oh no.
No.
And then if I get sick, you just, I try to just spit not around you. Because when I'm sick, I like to clear my nose out and stuff. And you're just like, ah. And I don't blame you.
If you were genuinely sick and like needed me, I think I could rally and do it because I've cleaned up like Aowen's throw up and stuff. Like if she gets sick, but that's my Achilles heel. Like I can take poop, I can take pee, I can take blood, I can take guts, I can take bone. I can't do that.
No, I can't. I can't. You know, it makes me think about. This is awful that I'm kind of chuckling at this, but you were on FaceTime with me and you discovered
so
her throw up and you're like cleaning it up while you're on FaceTime with me. And then all of a sudden you start going, and you're like, I have to call you back, and hung up really quick. And I could hear while you're hanging up, you're like, and I'm like,
I thought I was gonna throw up.
I was like,
I didn't, but I thought I was.
Right. And I'm sitting there at work and I'm kind of chuckling, but at the same time, like, I hope she's okay. But I'm also kind of like, the way this ended was like something from a movie because you're just like, I have to go, and then you just hang up.
It was so bad.
It was. I hate cleaning up any of that. I can't see. I can do throw up. It's not as big of a deal for me because I throw up a lot playing sports and stuff. Yeah. So it's not as big of a deal for me. Poop and pee is I can't. I can clean up her pee, the dog's pee, not a big deal, but like human, I can't. I never grew up with a baby.
So you would have died if you'd have been that poor doctor on the pit that got peed all over.
I can't. I couldn't. You showed me that clip, and I was just like, nope. I would have thrown up on the patient. I would have sprayed vomit on him.
On the patient.
And he would have deserved it. But still, like, golly. This one says, it's just one sentence, and it says, a patient once wrote they had a, quote, fatal heart attack on their intake form. You what? You what? Fatal.
Fatal.
You keep saying that word. I do not think you know what that means.
Yep.
Oh, man. Talking about movie quotes, this is, again, completely off subject, but today it came up, and Sam's monologue in the Two Towers to Frodo about the stories of old and stuff, and then that just talking about it, I'm starting to get choked up. It's like I want to record that monologue, like I want to read it myself as like a dramatic recording, but I'm gonna have a hard time doing it. And actually, wildly enough, I went and read the monologue in the book. And I think their rewriting of it for the movie made it even better. And that's wild to say.
That is wild to say. But Eowyn's speech in the book was a whole lot better.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And because they have to cut lines and stuff. Yeah. But the way they wrote it, the book is very good. But the way they modernized it, they just kind of took the same thing but modernized it. And the way that it's modernized, it just reads so emotionally and so well. And it's one of my favorite characters. So of course, it's going to be emotional to me, but it's also one of the moments that is like, you're telling me you didn't have any allegory in Lord of the Rings, because that is a moment of talking about the gospel. If I've ever seen a moment talking about the gospel, like there's good in this world and it's worth fighting for, or what he talks about. And it's like, come on, like you didn't have any allegory. You messed with C.S. Lewis Tolkien about the Chronicles of Narnia, but you had like 3 Jesus characters in
Right.
the Lord of the Rings. So chill. Like,
Was that just a little ADHD rabbit trail?
yeah, I saw something and it made me think of it, and
I just was curious.
that's
got
what
you on
this
the Lord of the Rings.
that's what this podcast is.
Gotcha.
That's that we anyway.
That should be a name of a podcast. Just rabbit trails.
Rabbit trails. It probably already exists.
Probably.
Again, there's a million podcasts out
Yeah.
there. Back to you, Hannah.
An elderly woman came into the x-ray room in a wheelchair, already changed into a gown for a KUB. KUB stands for kidneys, ureters, and bladder. So it's
Okay.
an x-ray of the abdomen.
Okay.
I saw 2 bulges on her lap. So I asked, "Did you remove all of your clothing and belongings?" And she said, "Yes." I asked, pointing to the 2 bulges in her lap, "Well, what are those?" She replied, "My breasts."
Oh. Oh no.
Do your boobs hang
Oh
low?
no.
Do they wobble to and from?
Ooh. That's rough. That didn't make me throw up. I was just like, ooh, like,
That's so embarrassing.
yeah. And I'm sure, like, she probably didn't think much of it because
Yeah.
she's just like, I'm an old lady. And
Yeah.
that's my.
One
But-
time I didn't ask any, this was just a me moment. It was
Yeah.
an embarrassing moment
Sure,
for me.
Sure.
But I did an abdomen x-ray and I noticed in the x-ray that there was this like circular thing and it was like even and on both sides. And I was like, what in the world? And I'm looking and it took me forever to realize it was that woman's nipples because it was so sagging and like hanging down.
You're
so
like,
low.
what is
It was
this?
like, they're not supposed to be there.
I'm not going to interrupt your stories, but I did find a list of people's best healthcare jokes, so I'm going to sprinkle those in as we go on as well. So, anyway,
This person said, I have to include a picture of my top 10 what the F's moments. Patient complains of lower abdominal pain and he wasn't specific yet. So I start the abdomen series and then I saw what I saw. I thought I should just go lower and then I ask, how did that happen? And I'm really hoping that he doesn't say, I sat on a park bench and it fell in. He tells me that he enjoys a little pain and a little with his pleasure. But this time he decided to put in 2 wood screws at a time instead of his usual 1 screw at a time. And although for his purposes the experiment worked, he couldn't slip them out. And she included a picture.
Oh, I'm good.
And
Yikes.
yeah.
That's rough. Yeah, no, I'm good. It's
For an
one of those-
abdomen, you only have to get through the bladder. She's lucky that she did a lower
Yeah,
pelvis because she would have missed all of that because it's hanging down.
sure.
Yeah.
A group of physicians is duck hunting. Finally, the first duck of the day flies overhead. The internist takes aim, but then says, that thing looks like a duck, but it also could be a goose or a quail or a chicken or even a... But by then, the duck is out of range. A few minutes later, another duck appears overhead, and the radiologist sees it first and says, that bird is consistent with a duck, but it is also consistent with a pheasant and a raven and a loon. Somebody pass me the binoculars, but the bird flies away. Then the third duck flies overhead, and boom, the surgeon blows it out of the sky, and then turns to the pathologist and says, hey, Fred, what the heck was that thing I just shot?
That radiology, that's dead on.
Yeah.
Dead on.
That's a very specific joke.
Yep.
I hope people got that.
ER doctor ordered bilateral ribs on a patient. I asked if she could stand and she said yes. I was like, okay, stand here. Nothing. She just sat smiling at me. I'm like, okay, let's stand up. She said, okay, and still didn't move. I was like, here, let me help you with the blankets. I lifted them up and she had bilateral below knee amputations.
No legs.
Clearly there was some kind of communication error there.
As soon as she said, okay, and then didn't move, I was like, she has no legs.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Another time,
Lieutenant Dan.
right?
You ain't got no legs.
Another time, a good-looking Navy guy comes to the ER for knee/ankle pain after falling off of the boat onto a dock. He was in thick work pants and boots. What I meant to say was, do your boots come off easily? But what I actually said was, do your pants come off easily?
Yikes.
And he replied, sometimes they can, with a winky face.
Oh no.
I died.
No. An anesthesiologist is getting settled on a plane for a well-deserved vacation. Suddenly, a flight attendant calls overhead, "Is there an anesthesiologist on the plane?" Curiously, she presses her call light and explains she's an anesthesiologist and asks what she is needed for. And the flight attendant responds, "There's a surgeon in first class who needs his seat adjusted."
Yes. Oh, just because they're the ones who are sitting at the head of the bed. So anytime there's like,
Right, yeah.
they need the table
Yep,
raised
yep,
or whatever,
yep, yep.
that's who they say
Right,
it to.
right, yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's pretty good. They go to school for a long time to end up just being a surgeon's adjusty boy.
Oh, well,
I mean, they do a lot.
so much more
they
than
do, that. They do, but like, let's be honest, some surgeons treat them like,
oh yeah, for sure.
You're my assistant.
You couldn't pay me enough to be an anesthesiologist because like all of that is so important because you've got to keep the patient under.
Well,
you're the surgery. Yours failed you.
should I tell a short healthcare story?
Sure, go ahead.
So when I was a young child, very young, around probably 3 years old, my grandpa, I had been having a lot of problems with my throat and like constant sore throats and strep throat and like trouble swallowing. And so I ended up going to the doctor, and as you can probably guess, the doctor said, you need your tonsils and your adenoids taken out. And so we planned the surgery and all that stuff. We get there that day and I go in and they put me to sleep your usual way. I'm assuming they just put something over me and say, count backwards from 10. And so I start going to sleep and everything's fine until all of a sudden, I remember waking up and seeing all these people around me and realizing I couldn't feel anything, but I was wide awake and lucid, and they were in the middle of my tonsillectomy. And
that's terrifying.
Of course, I start freaking out.
Because you're a kid.
Right? And they immediately hold me down.
Yeah.
Of course, because I can't, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
So they hold me down, but I will not calm down. And so they have to get my grandpa to come in and rock me back to sleep because that's the only way. And then they realize that I have a very high tolerance to the usual general anesthetic. And so I have to get double that. And so that was apparently in my notes, charts, whatever. So when I'm in high school and I have surgery on my knee, I blew out my knee in football. And so they have to give me basically double the average person's anesthesia. And so when I wake up, after surgery goes fine. I remember being rolled in. I remember the count back. And then I wake up. And I'm in the room, my grandpa's there, and they had given him like water and crackers to feed me, basically. They're like, he's going to have a really dry mouth. And he says, hey, you need to drink this water. And I argue with him. I'm kind of ornery, except I guess the numbing effects or whatever, I couldn't talk yet. So he's like, hey, you need to drink some of this water. And I don't want it. So I go, you need to drink the water, Noah. He's like, drink the water. And I put it in my mouth and I start drinking and it just dribbles out of the other side of my mouth. And he's just like, swallow the water. And I'm like, and I have to I remember I had to try to keep to close my mouth and swallow. And then he's like, eat this cracker. And I'm like, again, I don't want it. And so I'm like, and he's like, eat the cracker. And I take it and I start chewing and I'm like, it's so hard to chew. Like, it's the weirdest thing. And I was just kind of ornery and kind of out of it for a little while. So, yeah. And then when we have our surgery, again, I give that heads up and stuff. And when I wake up, or basically the next 12 hours from my surgery, you had the opposite. You were like in bad shape and feeling bad. Meanwhile, I was like a bear in hibernation. I would wake up for like 2 minutes and be like, "Hey, baby, how you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't feel good." And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." Like, I mean, it was.
I loved you so much, but I kind of hated you too, because here I am trying not to throw up my guts, and you're over here.
Yeah, and it was so weird. And I remember also you coming in and talking to me after surgery. They let you walk over there because your surgery was first. So you had been in the room for a little while.
Yeah.
And you walk in and you're like at the door and you're like, "Hey," and I'm like,
you didn't have your glasses on either.
But I knew it was your voice, but I was like, "Hey," and I was apparently so wimpy and like
you were like, "Hey, baby." And I'm like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah."
And then I passed out. And that was it. Like, I became like a child, I guess.
It was so funny.
Oh, well, that's my anesthesia story for folks.
We had an upright Bucky that had 2 circles indicating the outer cells and a rectangle indicating the center cell. So the upright Bucky is what, like you'll go and put your chest up against for a chest x-ray or whatever. It's what captures the images. After patting the board and telling the patient to put her chest against it, my female patient asked if her boobs were supposed to go in the circles. We had a good laugh, and then I asked her what she thought the rectangle was for. She didn't put the answer to it, but I wonder what the patient thought that was for. That's interesting. While working at an urgent care, a guy walks in and I stand up to greet him. I see his friend laying on the floor. I'm thinking, what the heck is this guy doing on the floor? I'm kind of grouchy about it and about to scold him for being on the floor when I notice he's a lower limb amputee.
Oh.
He then says to me, "Oh, sorry, I fell in the hole." You could tell that he's used that line before.
Poor thing.
As a student, I walked into a room as a man had just been tipped for a BE, barium enema. So, you know what an enema enema goes.
Yes.
And I said, "Hello, sir. How are you doing?" And he's like, "How do you think I'm doing? I got this thing shoved up my butt." To this day, I still have a hard time asking a patient how they're doing.
Goodness gracious. I got this joke for you. It says, I just posted this on the pathology subreddit, coincidentally enough. An internist, a plastic surgeon, and a pathologist on death row are about to be executed by electric chair. The executioner takes the internist to the chair and asks if he has any last words. The internist shakes his head, and the executioner sits down in the chair and turns on the switch and begins the electrocution. Miraculously, the chair doesn't turn on. The internist is safe. "In my 30 years as an executioner, I've never seen this before," says the executioner. "Today is your lucky day. I'm going to let you live." The plastic surgeon comes, and the executioner asks if he has any last words. "Nope," he says, with the slightest smile on his face as he eyes the chair. He is placed in the chair, and the executioner flips the switch, and another miracle occurs. The chair doesn't turn on. "This is your lucky day," says the executioner, astounded by the miracle that just took place. The plastic surgeon is free to leave. The executioner summons the pathologist. "Any last words, sir?" The pathologist says, "The chair isn't plugged in."
Oh, no.
Yikes.
Went to do a portable, walked in, verified patient information, and when patient looked up at me, I was like, "Wow, you have beautiful blue eyes." She replies, "Cataracts. I have cataracts."
Oh, no.
When I was at my first site as a student, we still had CR and had done a run of portables. So CR means that it's not fully digital, so that you have to process those images. It's not film. it's kind of like the step between film and fully digital. Our CR processor was in our x-ray room in the ED, so we went there after our run. Another tech who was always super grouchy and didn't ever want students with him had just brought in a patient by stretcher for a chest x-ray. When he had her stand up, he helped her to the Bucky, and I noticed she wasn't wearing a thing under her gown. No biggie, right? Wrong. She had soiled herself, and it was smeared all over her sheet and her behind. He walks back to expose, and it starts to smell like poo.
No.
I told him she had pooed all over herself, and when he goes back to position her for the lateral, I noticed poo in the control room.
No.
He stepped on it and trailed it all over the floor. He let me join him on exams after that.
No. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. What kind of prize do you give someone who hasn't moved a muscle in over a year? A trophy.
Oh, no. Oh, that's awful.
Oh, this is a little dark. Love you.
Love you too.
Love everybody listening.
Told a male patient to undress from the waist down, put the gown on, and have a seat on the table. Came back into the exam room with him completely nude, standing in the middle of the table.
What? All right.
I want to know the thought process.
Yeah, I'm so confused. Okay, this is a series of questions. So it's, how do you hide a dollar bill from a hospitalist? Put it under a surgical dressing. How do you hide a dollar bill from a general surgeon? Put it in the chart. How do you hide a dollar bill from a plastic surgeon? You can't. How do you hide a dollar bill from a pediatrician? It doesn't matter where you put it; they won't find it anyway.
Oh no!
How do you hide a dollar bill from an ophthalmologist? Put it on an inpatient on the weekend. How do you hide a dollar bill from an obstetrician? What's an obstetrician? I don't. I'm going to Google this because I don't know this word.
I'm pretty sure that also has to do with eyes.
Obstetrician. I sound stupid right now. A doctor who specializes in caring for women during pregnancy and childbirth.
Okay, so an OBGYN. I just didn't recognize.
Yeah, put it on the patient's head. That's how you hide the dollar bill from them. How do you hide a dollar bill from an orthopedic surgeon? You put it in a textbook.
Yep.
How do you hide a dollar bill from a neurosurgeon? Put it on their kid's forehead. Because they never see their children.
Yeah.
Because they're always at work. That's kind of sad.
That's awful.
How do you hide a $100 bill from a pediatrician? Doesn't matter. They don't know what they look like. How do you hide a dollar bill from a radiologist? Stick it in a well-lit room.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Light is our Achilles heel.
Yeah. Every time I've ever been in your department at any hospital, it's always dark in there.
Yeah. Well, you get used to, because we have to have it dim to be able to see like your crosshairs and stuff. And so you get used to that, and the bright lights just are overwhelming.
And then whenever I turn on the light in the bedroom, you always go,
yeah, that's it.
I know it's.
Yeah, that's you. You always do that. Literally always do that. I had a 70-something-year-old woman tell me that she broke her hip doing a sexy scooter dance.
What?
For her boyfriend after she was cleared for sex from her bladder sling surgery. What? And she was mad. Dance. And she was mad because they couldn't get it on for another recovery time.
Oh, no. I guess get it how you can, but...
Hey, you know what?
What?
70-something? Good for her.
Scooter dance. Good job doing a scooter dance.
Just don't fall and break your hip next time.
What happens if you boil a funny bone? It becomes a laughing stock.
Oh, God.
That was humorous.
I had a patient tell me that my chest x-ray gave him the hiccups back because they were gone until after I came in and did the x-ray. I told him, yep, it's definitely that.
Oh. How do you know which house belongs to the radiologist?
It's always dark inside.
The one with the best hedges.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I was hoping you would get it. Let's see. Could someone clinically correlate this joke? There's a lot of shades of gray, but I'm just not getting it. One approach some radiologists use in hopes of decreasing their malpractice risks is called hedging. Hedging is essentially
their bets. Yeah.
essentially communication of findings that are uncertain using terms that are ambiguous, vague, or imprecise. Also, the thing, could someone clinically correlate this joke? There's a lot of shades of gray.
Yeah.
These people are nerds.
Yeah. That's pretty great.
Radiologist's favorite breakfast, chicken and waffle, because they're hedging their bets. They're waffling. Anyway.
I was about to leave for the day, and I had one of the EMTs come into the CT control room and tell me that there was a CT head in the ED. I told him I was leaving for the day and night shift could do it. He replied, I think you're going to want to do this one. I get to the trauma room, and there lies a guy fully aware and oriented with an entire rear view mirror sticking out of the side of his head. The ball end of the mirror was the part stuck in his head, and when I asked him how that happened, he replied that he was in the back seat and had no idea. Word got around quick because everyone wanted to be in the control room to see that.
What are the ABCs of emergency medicine? Assess from doorway, back away slowly, CT scan.
Yeah.
Which, with you being on call, I know you get that very much, and I get it only because of experiencing you on call.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, go ahead.
We had to give rectal contrast recently after a gunshot wound had exited near a guy's anus. The tech who was readying the bag went to reach down and grab the KY, and I nudged her arm. She looked up as if to ask with a shrug, what? And I said, Haktua. She lost it and regained her composure very quickly.
Yikes.
That's awful.
A nurse goes to the back to deposit her paycheck. When she steps up to the teller's window, she starts patting herself down and finally comes up with the thermometer. The teller hears her mutter, great, some butthole's got my pen.
Oh, no.
I just thought that went right along with what you were saying. There's too much butthole talk on this episode. I don't like this.
It's all right.
Oh.
A tech I worked with was distracted by a handsome soldier needing a knee x-ray. She had him take his shirt off, assuming that he needed a chest x-ray.
Oh my gosh.
I will say, in her defense, that is the most common x-ray that we do. So if you're going to be chronically setting up for something, like, your best bet is to do a chest x-ray.
Yeah.
That is kind of funny.
Oh man. You know, I was reading recently some articles about some new findings in medicine. And this one thing says, according to new research, it was specifically, well, it was a lot of different things, but this one was specifically about like gastrointestinal problems. And it said that diarrhea is hereditary. It runs in your genes.
That's awful.
That was actually only one sentence, and I just came up with the build-up for that.
Nice.
Thank you. I'll be here until this episode's over in just a few minutes. We've got time for like 2 more.
As an IR tech, which is interventional radiology, I was holding the femoral artery of an 86-year-old lady who had just had an angiogram and asked her my usual question. So did you get that warm feeling when we injected the contrast? It kind of feels like a hot flash, makes you feel like you're wet in your pants. She replied, oh yes. My guinea hasn't been that hot in a long time. The nurses could not contain their laughter and had to exit the lab, leaving me to my red face.
Goodness gracious.
Guinea. I wonder how it got that nickname.
Yeah, I don't know. This is awful. How do you describe an orthopedic surgeon? Strong as an ox and nearly twice as smart.
Oh.
I say all of these in full joking. I don't know. Again, all of these are jokes. Just don't get upset. They're jokes. They're also coming from healthcare people, so you know.
I will say there there are reasons why the broad statements for certain fields have been made.
I got one more joke, and then I'm not going to tell any more jokes, and I'll give you the floor for a couple more stories. What's the difference between a VA nurse? What's the 3 differences between a VA nurse and a bullet? A bullet can draw blood, a bullet can be fired, and a bullet can only kill once.
Oh, no. That's so bad. Yikes.
Oh, and somebody followed it up with, what's the best way to... I'll tell you off air. Hey, the VA has some great things, and I'm glad that veterans do get health care, but my grandpa was a veteran who went through VA stuff, and there's so much red tape to cut, and there's so much paperwork and so much ambiguity that is a mess.
Yeah.
In that,
any kind of government anything is a total nightmare.
And I don't love the last thing about the VA nurse thing. There were some incredible nurses that took care of my grandpa in the VA hospitals and stuff, and they mean a lot. Some of them were horrible, but some of them are great, and some of them showed better care than most of the doctors.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
it's very common that you will get better treatment and better care from a nurse than you will your providers.
Yeah. All right. So a couple more humorous stories to wrap up the thing here. Humorous. I hit my humorous the other day and it freaking hurt.
Wasn't so funny, huh?
It wasn't so funny.
Rectal contrast on a ghetto GSW, and he looked and told us to look him in the eyes while we tipped him. You about hit yourself with that. That's funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My lady said, "You're so beautiful. Blurry, but beautiful." She was on quite a bit of pain meds.
Yeah.
All right, last one. I was taking a chest x-ray on an elderly lady. I put the board behind her explaining that this is what captures the image. Just before I gave her breathing instructions, she goes, "Hun, I thought you were going to take a chest x-ray. I'm old and not wearing a bra, so your board needs to be closer to my knees than my shoulders." I doubled over laughing.
Oh, man, that's pretty good. I'm sure you have more stories, and we can put out more prompts like that, too. But that'll do it for today's take on that segment. A lot of good content there, a lot of good stories, and it's fun to hear from a lot of point of views from all over the country.
Yeah.
So if you enjoyed this segment, let us know about it. How? That's a good question. Join the Patreon, and you can do it there, our very inactive Patreon. Anyway, that is another episode of A Little Off the Top with your hosts,
Hannah
and Noah. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, share it with your friends, rate us 5 stars. And if they didn't, what do they do, Hannah?
They just ignore it.
That's right. Like we said earlier, there's a million other podcasts out there. So move on and, still rate us 5 stars. We maybe somebody else will like it. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with episode 50 coming up very soon. So stay tuned in for that. And that is another episode of A Little Off the Top. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.